Today is an exciting day because I am going car shopping. I've got a few test drives booked. I'm going to show you the cars. I'm going to break down the numbers and the financials and the different ways of buying them, from cash to financing and other ways. You are going to love it. Let's begin. If you're anything like me, you probably love cars, and it's a bit of an expensive hobby. But today I'm going to break down to you the best cars that I think are going to stand the test of time. They're not going to depreciate and drop like a stone in the current economy. Because let's be honest, right now with sky high interest rates and everything else, it's probably not the best time to buy a car. Or is it? Well, firstly, we need to look at the different models. Now, if you go for something that's really modern, that's only come out maybe in the last few years, then chances are you're going to lose a lot of money. I've been speaking to a lot of finance houses and a lot of brokerages and a lot of car dealerships, and the last 3 months have literally been a ghost town. There has been absolutely nothing selling, maybe the odd one or two, but pretty much stock has remained the same. And dealers now have a problem in the sense that they took these vehicles in maybe 6 months ago at these prices up here, but nothing has happened for the last 3 months. So now the market has substantially dropped and they're stuck with stock that they paid too much money for, and they're trying to shift that stock. The other problem is interest rates are sky high, but I'm going to break down to you how you can get behind the wheel of your next car for a very affordable rate. But before I go into that, my number one rule when it comes to buying these cars is do not overstretch yourself. And what I mean by that is, look, don't do it for the gram, don't do it for social media. If you can't afford to buy the car out cash, in other words, without any financing, I personally don't think you should be buying them at all. That is my number one rule. If I can't buy it cash, I'm not buying it at all. Then it comes down to looking at, well, look, if I can put the cash somewhere else to make a better return than having it stuck in this car, but more on that later. And if you want to know how I'm able to afford these cars, then check out my book, Knowledge Worth Millions: How I Built a 7-Figure Business Online After Working in a Car Park for 7 years. I'll leave a link down below. Back to the action. So currently I drive a Audi R8 V10 Plus, and this car is absolutely amazing. I think it is really difficult to get a car that is better value for money. The screaming V10, the extra carbon, and my particular one happens to have a lot of extra options on it. I love that car. I actually dailied that car all throughout the summer, but as the weather started to turn, naturally I went back to my daily car, which is an M140i. I'll do another video on that another time. But through this R8 experience, I've realized I miss one thing. I miss the open air theater. Pretty much most of my life, I've had a convertible in the summer. There's nothing that I love more than putting the roof down and going driving. Now, you might say, well, look, Stas, you're in the UK, you get sunshine maybe about 2 weeks of the year. And whilst I agree with you, my golden rule is if it's 15 degrees or more, that roof can come down. And I've realized recently that for the last 2 summers, I have not had a convertible, which got me thinking I need to find myself a convertible car for the summer. And I have a dilemma that I want your help with, which I'm going to cover towards the end of this video. As much as I love the R8 V10 Plus, it is probably the fastest car I have ever driven and ever owned. But once you've done that 0 to 60 a few times and you've heard the crackles and pops, I think the car lacks a little bit of drama, and it is the perfect entry-level supercar, as they say, but I think I want something a little bit more mechanical, something a little bit more old school. So I started looking, and my search naturally led me to a Huracan, a Lamborghini Huracan. So I went to look at one, I went to test drive one, and it actually drove very, very similar to the R8. Now, personally, I don't see the point in paying double for exactly the same car just with a different badge so that you can get more likes on Instagram. That's not my style, and I really couldn't care less about that stuff. Then I started looking at the one step up from that, and that is the Lamborghini Performante, the Huracan Performante, but it had to be a Spider. And what I found was, if you're looking for a good, clean example, my preference in that car would be Verde Mantis Green. You're looking at a £200,000 and probably more to get the right spec. Personally, I don't want the sports racing seats because a friend of mine used to have them and they were really, really stiff. I don't want to kill my back. So looking at the market, I'm thinking, well, I can go for the Perth, which is around £200,000, or what other options are there? And this is where I began to look for some of the more classic models. My search for a classic Ferrari, a Lamborghini, led me down different avenues. And I was looking at things like the 360, the 430, the 458, the 488, and that's about it. Because personally, I am not a fan of anything that Ferrari made after the 488. I think it looks too squashed, too futuristic, and it's just not for me. Now on the Lamborghini side, well, your only option really is a Huracan, and then the one before that is a Gallardo, or as you pronounce it, Gallardo. So when I started looking at the Gallardos, I found there were many different variants. You've got the pre-LP version, which is the original way back in the 2000s, and then you've got the post-LP version, which is when Lamborghini had more of an Audi influence and the cars were a lot more reliable. Now, there's one problem when you're looking at a car that age. The technology really isn't the best. But none of that mattered to me because this car has something money can't buy, which I'll come to in just a moment. The other car that I went and looked at was a Ferrari 488 Spider. And whilst the car looks absolutely exquisite from the inside, I wasn't overly impressed with how it drove. It was okay, but it was lacking something for me. Within 2 minutes of driving the 458 Spider, I immediately knew that that was the better car to the 488. It drives better, it feels better, it's more raw, and it sounds 10 times as good as the twin turbo 488. So then my search was down to the 458 Spider and the Lamborghini Gallardo. But the problem is there are so many different variants of the Gallardo. Which one do you go for? If you can find a manual gated version, then you are in luck, but there's only really a handful around the world, and especially in the UK. So I started looking at the different variables because for me, I like something that's a bit more exclusive, a bit more special, and something that you don't see every day. And then I stumbled across the Lamborghini Gallardo Performante, which was a special edition that they produced from 2011 to 2014, and there was only 180 models produced worldwide. So straight away, I knew that this car was going to hold its value. So I started looking into the numbers and researching everything I could about these cars, and eventually found a really nice one to go and look at. Now, with the car being a 2011 model, it is over 10 years old. I think it still looks absolutely exquisite. And after the guys filled it up with some petrol, we went on the all-important test drive. Even being over 10 years old, the car didn't actually feel that old. The full Alcantara interior, the bucket seats really give it that more modern supercar look. And when you put the roof down, you could literally be in a 1 or 2 year old Lamborghini. So instantly I knew that this was the more special car for me. Having said that, the 458 is way more practical on a daily basis. It's got the bumpy mode ride suspension, and you could easily daily that car without getting tired. And there's more space, there's more luggage room in the front, and all these other details. So the kind of car that makes sense for a daily drive is the 458. The kind of car that my heart and soul was screaming out was the Lamborghini Gallardo Performante. And there's a bit more of a twist to this, which I'll come to in a second. But there's a few problems. It's very stiff. It literally feels like you're driving on a rock. The steering wheel is a little bit heavy. The pedals are facing the center console, so you constantly feel like you're looking over to the passenger side. But guess what? That is the whole point of the old school Lambos. They have that drama, they have that excitement. And with only about 180 models worldwide, from what I can research, and if you know there's more, then please let me know, I started to fall in love with this car. So let me now break down the numbers to you about how much it would cost to own one of these cars. Assuming a purchase price of £100,000 for the car, I'm going to give you two options. Put in 20% deposit down and 30%. So if you put down 20% deposit on a £100,000 Lamborghini, you are looking at monthly payments of £729 and change. That is over 4 years of the car. Now, there's one big caveat to all of this, is that is only the interest. Yes, you are paying around about 10% interest to borrow that £80,000. So essentially, look at it this way. You are paying around £8,000 per year to enjoy that car. But once the term expires, your actual principal loan stays the same. So if you are ever going to do an interest-only agreement on a supercar, make sure that it doesn't plummet in price or that you've got the finances to back it, which comes back to my rule of don't finance it unless you can buy it outright. The other option is putting 30% deposit down of £30,000, and that makes the payments £547 and change, which means that your interest is essentially £7,000 per year to own this car. And remember, after the 4 years have expired, you still owe £70,000 for the car. The Ferrari is a slightly more expensive car, and assuming a purchase price of £130,000 with a £30,000 deposit, you are looking at monthly payments of £939 and change over 4 years. If you were to put a little bit more and put down a £39,000 deposit, then you're looking at monthly payments of £711 per month. But remember, the original principal still stays the same, which is £91,000 on that particular example. So in 4 years, you will still have to pay that money back. And at that point, you better hope that that car is either worth that money or you've got the cash to pay the loan, which is why, going back to my number one rule, if you can't buy it outright, do not finance it. So how do you think those figures compare? Which one would you go for? Would you go for the Ferrari 458 Spider or the Lamborghini Gallardo Performante? And in terms of the numbers, it really comes down to how much can you make your money work for you. Let's say you take £100,000. If you finance a car at 10%, you better find a vehicle that's going to make your money more than 10%. If you can find an investment or maybe some business ventures that will make you 15% or 20% per annum, then personally, I would finance the car and put that cash into the business venture or investments, which I have done that many times before. If you cannot, which at the minute in this high interest rate environment, it is a buyer's market. However, the buyers need to be cash ready, because personally, I do not fancy paying 10% interest to drive a car when you can just buy it cash. Right now, with the way the economy is and the market is, there's only really one business model that I know that's going to help you generate those sorts of returns. I'm going to cover that in a moment. But coming back to my beloved R8, what should I do with it? Well, I don't know any finance on that because I paid for that car in cash. So really, I could part exchange it, I could trade it in, or I could just sell it privately however I want to. Let me know in the comments what I should do. Stick with the R8 V10 Plus, or perhaps go for a Spider version of the 458 or a Spider version of the Lamborghini Gallardo Performante. So why am I leaning towards the Lamborghini Gallardo? Well, you see, I have had a vision board for many years, and I've recently flicked back through that catalog and found a picture of a white Gallardo convertible. So there you have it. If you have a vision, eventually you will get yourself in a situation where you're able to make that a reality. And now I'm at that point where I didn't even realize that all those years ago, I printed off a picture of a white Lamborghini Gallardo convertible, and now I can purchase that very car. So goes to show you, you have to dream, you have to set goals, and you have to believe that you can achieve it, and you will. Thank you so much for watching and following the journey. Keep supporting, and I'll see you in the next one.